Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Fantasy Authors Lounge. It is the first Author Lounge interview of 2022, and we have a special guest here today, the king of Dragon Fantasy, and we'll just talking about that and get into more of that in a minute. It is
I did
Michael.
not say I was any king.
It's Michael R. Miller. Welcome to the Fantasy Lounge. How are you doing, my friend?
Well, doing very well, Ben. Thanks for inviting me in. It's been such a long time since we caught up.
It is. I think literally it was one of the weeks or maybe the month or two before I left for Canada about 4 or 5 years ago now. I lost saw you in person.
Yeah. I have a feeling you offered to drive me to Bristol Con, but I couldn't make it, and that must have been 2017 or something. So it's been a long time.
Yeah. Well, thanks to technology. Here we are.
Yes.
Chatting away. Yeah. Thanks for joining us. First things first, why don't we jump in with you telling us about yourself and your publishing journey so far?
Well, Michael R. Miller here. I am self-published. I have two main series. The first is a trilogy called The Dragon's Blade, which is fully complete. And the second series that I'm working on right now is called Songs of Chaos. And it's a Dragon Rider epic, kind of in the style of Eragon, Dragon Blades of Pern, that sort of stuff, with a slightly modern cultivation magic system worked in there for good measure. And lots of cooking. So if you like food, definitely give Songs of Chaos a go. I also have one standalone RPG called Battlespire, which is literally World of Warcraft meets Die Hard. So that sounds fun. Dumping lots of Easter eggs for both the game and the movie. That was a lot of fun writing that. Yeah.
That's really cool. It's one I wanted to check out because I mean that description makes me want to check it out even more. Anything like Die Hard or meets Die Hard. I think even one of my books might have one of those. Game of Thrones meets Die Hard, but I'm in. Yeah, that sounds awesome. So in terms of your publishing journey and your author journey, how did you start out? Obviously, how did you decide self-publishing? How have you got where you are? Which is a very successful place, I might add as well.
So yeah, way back, I was after uni, I came to London. I was doing a law conversion course. For those who don't know what that is, it's something in the UK where you can, after you've already got a degree in whatever it is, you can go and get a law degree, but within 1 year. So they take the 3 years and they smush it into one, and it is really painful. Really hard. There's lots of work, and I was in the middle of that, and I sort of had I guess I would call it a quarter-life crisis, and I decided, well, I really want to write books.
Yes,
which was quite a thing to decide. And looking back, I have no idea where I found time, but I started writing what became the first edition of Dragon's Blade whilst I was doing that course. So I must have had no time, basically not even sleeping. I can't remember. I don't know how I managed it, because these days I get tired doing far less. But I sort of wrote, maybe it was just like driven, but I wrote that first book and I released it later that year. And why self-publishing it? Well, it was a little bit of a speed thing. I was so driven to want to do this that the idea of doing the querying for a long time, and then even if it did get sold for a traditional publisher, it would then take another year, sometimes more, to come out. The uncertainty of the uncertainty of wondering would it ever actually happen. Whereas on the self-publishing side, as I started to look into it more, it was like, well, no, if you want to do it, you can definitely do it. And that kind of suits my personality a little bit. I'm kind of type A. I like to take charge. I don't mind getting my hands into some of the nitty-gritty and learning it. So I sort of dove in head first, which is also kind of bizarre. I probably should have done a lot more work on it, but I'm also that sort of person that likes to learn by doing. I think I think to some extent that if I had to go through all the traditional hurdles, I wouldn't have got there, because I like that feedback loop. You do something, does it work, does it not? You know, you put something out there, people give you feedback, you can adjust it, you can tweak it. That's just how I like to work. It suits me. So yeah, and here we are. So that was November 2015 that the first book came out.
Nice.
And so here we are. Yeah. Ups and downs along the way. And I think you were the first author I ever met in person at that first convention back in the
Fantasy Con Nottingham, 2015 or 16. Yeah, I think. Yeah, I remember
2015. Yeah.
Shared a few pints in the bar and chatted books. Yeah, that was fun actually. Yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah, it's
You've
crazy.
been
I
blazing the
mean,
trail for years before that, so
trying to.
definitely it was, having someone like you there made self-publishing seem a lot more possible and viable. Without
Oh,
some
yeah.
people doing it, it would have been very hard to work up to doing it. So yeah.
I appreciate that. Yeah, I mean, it definitely felt like the kind of Wild West, or even apocalyptic, you could say, back in those times. Because yeah, even around like 2014, 15, it was very hard to find other authors. I think. I mean, online, yes, but to a certain point. But even like now, it feels like the like my Twitter feed and Facebook feed is just full of authors all the time, which is awesome. But yeah, it was really hard to kind of meet. And no offense, like meeting trad authors and any author is great, but an indie author who's gone through the self-publishing journey and is going through exactly the same sort of like questions and processes, and yeah, it was kind of difficult, but yeah, better times. We got to talk dragons. We mentioned dragons before. We had a little chat before this.
Dragons.
Spoke about dragons, and we love them. Obviously, they feature. We obviously write similar fantasy in that sort of sense in terms of the Songs of Chaos and the Dragon's Blade trilogy. So, as a reader, what first drew you to dragons? Or did you even read a lot of dragon fiction growing up?
Yes and no. Like, I think people will be shocked to hear. Like, I'm not like super dragon obsessed, but they are the hallmark of fantasy in many ways. Obviously loved Aragon. Everyone that's read Songs of Chaos will know that. I grew up with those books. But just something about them feels very quintessentially fantasy. And to be honest, when it comes to like Dragon's Blade, where the dragons are very different. I mean, they're deliberately different. They're kind of trapped in human form. They're not really dragons in the traditional sense. That was a deliberately different take on them. They just happen to be called dragons with some of the traits that we might think of them, with the arrogance and the hot-headed tempers and this sort of thing, and the rivalry between humans and things, but very much in a different form. So that was a deliberate way to sort of have the same coolness but a little different. And with songs, it was, I'm going to do a good old Dragon Rider epic. So get all the good stuff in there, because I think it's one of those things where it works for a good reason, and it has such strong potential for characters. The bond between the rider and the dragon, so much work there for characters. I love doing character stories, and it's kind of one of those, like, it's kind of like this perfect lightning in the bottle things for the genre, where it's like, what is a really good fantasy? Well, a really good Dragon Rider fantasy is really, really fun, right? I mean, it's just excellent. Like the How to Train Your Dragon movies, for example, were needlessly good. I mean, they were unnecessarily well written. I mean, stuff like that. You just think every so often, I know, right? Truthfully, every so often something comes along like that, and it just reminds you why that sort of subgenre or that niche that is works so well. They just sort of allow you to go. They just allow you to give the most fantasy you can. I think it can be the most high fantasy when you've got dragons involved. That's why I went for it. I like that. Yeah, especially when it comes to magic systems. I'm not writing anything that's particularly super low fantasy or super realistic. I like to go quite high. I like to go quite epic. So yeah, get the dragons in there. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I mean, I like that you're taking different takes on dragons, and that you're kind of changing the tropes and the meaning of dragon. I love that. And especially with the Songs of Chaos and your most recent two books, the dragons got a little something different about them as well, haven't they?
So the main character, the sort of toothless of the series, if you will, Ash, is blind. Yeah. He's a blind dragon, which and that causes a lot of issues in that world building, where other dragons look down on him, and they look down on the main character Holt too, and he has a lot of things to overcome. But it seemed like, again, like, if you're trying to think, how am I going to make this feel fresh or feel interesting? We've seen lots of dragons before. We've seen dragon riding before. Something reasonably straightforward is, well, what if one of them? I mean, I was inspired by the How to Train Your Dragon, of course. I mean, I loved seeing how Toothless, his wing gets damaged, right? So Hiccup has to use his engineering to get the tail fin and
Love it.
and so they can only fly with each other. That was a dragon ride. They didn't have the soul bonds and that stuff. It was a bit more. They were a bit more like pet-like, but you could see elements of like something really interesting coming through from that. And so I thought, oh yeah, okay, so I want them to really be relying on each other in a deep, meaningful way. And at the time, I was watching Daredevil, and I really liked Daredevil.
Oh,
Daredevil's
nice.
so good. So I thought, well, what if I'll make the dragon blind? That'll work.
Why not?
And
I think it's great.
Well, why not? I think it's great. I mean, you get all sorts of good stuff in there. It's he looks cool with the blindfold. I think certainly makes people question. I think they see the cover and it looks kind of not super standard. The artwork's fantastic, but the blindfold on the dragon makes people go like, well, what's that?
Yeah, that's the thing. I haven't really come across, and I'm not as well read as I should be. I haven't read every single fantasy book out there, if only. But the concept of a book, yeah, I know. It's the great sadness of being human and mortal, and too many books to read. But yeah, in terms of a blind dragon, I haven't come across it. But I mean, the cover design immediately when you showed that off when they first came out, I was just like, yep, sold. Always put a dragon on your cover to get me to buy it. That's basically how I buy books. But yeah, I think it's excellent, and I mean, it seems to be something that is really working for you as well. Readers, from the reviews and stuff, just seem to really like that take, and especially as well with the human character, with the cooking, which is I think is great.
Yeah, so the main character Holt, he is called Holt Cook. In this world, I went for the old school, and like how surnames literally came about was your name often denoted what you were. I mean, this is where Smith comes from. It was Smith.
You're a miller, for example.
Miller, yeah, I'm Miller, and so at some point someone milled flour, and they were called the Miller. And if you didn't have a fancy family name, you probably had a profession name, and this is actually where it comes from. It's funny to me that some people don't know this, and so when I put these names in the book, they tell me it's very unrealistic that people. I'm like, no.
It's very.
You have all these names, and there's loads of them actually. The more you look into that, like medieval profession names, Renaissance profession names, there are so many out there. Jobs that no longer exist, obviously, that you forget about, but then you think, oh, that was someone's name, like Chandler or Chandler, depending on how you pronounce it. Like Chandler from Friends is the job of the person who used to take care of the candles in a keep or somewhere. So lots of amazing. You can go down in quite a few ways of this. But yes, Holt Cook is the son of the head cook of the Dragon Rider Hall in his country, and so he is he's just growing up learning. He thinks he's just going to be a cook like his dad, like the dad before him, and he is washing the pots as he's a little teenager. So he's a pot boy washing the pots. But he has an interest in food, so and I have an interest in food, and so yes, Holt there's a lot of cooking. The dragons have each dragon. There's different types of dragon, and each of them have a different type of food that they prefer that helps their magic. So there's lots of like cooking involved actually in the magic system as well. So there's lots of reasons why Holt being a cook ties in very well. Which I like a lot. I think I hate to say it adds flavor to the book, but it adds something. It adds something like a foodie fantasy where the main character there's a lot of cooking, almost like a cooking profession from an RPG game in some respects comes through. And so you have a cook apprentice and a blind dragon out to save the world. It's just different enough with enough uniqueness in there, and they're just the classic underdogs. They're just completely classic, and I
was going to say,
people you can attach them quite easily. Like Holt does what he does because he sort of cares and wants to help, and it's just sort of wholesome. It's not there's dark stuff in the story. There's plenty of dark stuff in the world, but the story is meant to be quite an optimistic one. I'm not trying. It's nothing grim dark. It's none of that. It's reasonably bright, heroic fantasy.
Yeah, that sounds excellent. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to reading it. It's given me like a little bit in terms of like Fitz chivalry vibes, just the way you described it there, like growing up in the castle as like a pot cleaner, and it's giving me like definitely Aragon vibes, like you said.
It's interesting you talk about Fitz. I didn't really think of that comparison. It's, I suppose, a little bit, but it's quite early on. You know, Fitz spent books and books.
Oh yeah.
You know, and Holt's adventure kind of thrusts him out a bit sooner. But yeah, you get that sense of where he is and growing up there and the interactions he's had with the superior riders around him and stuff. Yeah, I think people really have been, and I'm very thankful that they're very drawn to the friendship. Ultimately, it's a friendship between Holt and Ash is the whole spine of that story, especially the first book. These two best friends really that rely on each other. You've got it's like your Ash Ketchum Pikachu. It's that perfect sort of these really strong friendships between them that see them through, which thankfully have resonated with people.
Absolutely. We all try and write new stories and things like that, and obviously people say the stories don't change and it's all just stories in a different garb each time. I think the kind of hopeful story and the story, just a simple, not to say your book is simple at all, but at its core message, a story of friendship, I think it's just like something that really, really does resonate with people. And sometimes, like, as a purveyor of grimdark stuff, I watched the film, not really, it's fantasy but not dragon related at all, but Klaus, that animated Christmas film. It was just absolutely brilliant, but it's got these moments of joy, and it's got little dark touches. It's definitely for like adults. Like, he turns up at this town, there's two old ladies just dragging a body bag out of a building and just going, it's just, you've got these little tiny moments of it, which is just like brilliantly dark. But I'm like, I want to write that. I just want to write like these little glorious moments of joy sometimes and then bring it back to the darkness. But I'm really intrigued, Mike.
Next book, something fun. There's a lot of friendship in Lord of the Rings too, right? There's a huge core component of those books is like fellowship and friendship, right? I mean, absolutely. It's pretty key. And I mean, I make no qualms. Like I set out to write what I hoped would be a really solid hero's journey. It wasn't. I'm not trying to break the mold here necessarily. I don't know if it's wise to necessarily do that, because I think it's hard enough. And these sorts of stories, these structures, aren't accidental. Like, they really speak to something deep in our psychologies that really resonates. The skill isn't in breaking that, because then it won't resonate very well. The skill is doing it really well, and in a way that doesn't feel too generic or too on the nose, right? Because I mean, even when you go, have you watched Arcane on Netflix?
Not yet. To my shame, I haven't got around to it yet.
I mean, Arcane is brilliant. But it's not breaking molds. It's just really, really well done, you know. And okay, have you seen the new Spider-Man film?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, there we go. So like, it's not like they did something obscenely weird or crazy. It was similar character-driven heroes' journeys, right? I mean, it was sort of an origin movie as a finale, but it's very much in the hero's journey structure, but fresh in the kind of take on the world building and the magic and all the characters coming in. Very respectful to all the old characters, but everything was just sort of it feels simple when you step back and you go, well, of course that logically follows, but it's very hard to get something done so well where all the characters feel like themselves. They have logical through arcs that are really meaningful and make a lot of sense and are consistent. It's hard, man, but if you get it right, it really resonates. You know, that's why that movie was so good. Like, I'm still thinking about that film. Like, I just can't believe how well they pulled off all those character moments.
I know, each one having a little moment.
So like this subvert. I'm not a fan of the whole subvert stuff on purpose. I just think you're trying too hard. You don't. I think if you're doing that, it's like, oh, you haven't quite understood how important it is to actually fulfill what people are looking for symbolically and or psychologically from the story. It's not, you're not giving people what they want, and that's somehow like you're hack and selling out. It's like, no, you're fulfilling the promise of what they're there for. You know, you want to. It would be subversive if I had Holt and Ash kill each other at the end of the book. Pretty subversive, but really, really bad idea. Like, it's it doesn't. It's not a genius idea to do something completely insane, because anything that's completely wild, you could say, well, it's original, yes, but it doesn't work. You know.
Yeah, it still needs to be satisfying.
Exactly. I think you have to find the healthy balance.
No, I completely agree, and it's something that I think, yeah, can be what needs to be at the core of any story is like, yeah, that's satisfying. This is why I struggle not to bash horror films as an entire genre, but I struggle with a lot of horror films because there's it's really hard to find a satisfying ending. And I watched one last night where it looked like it was going to be satisfying. All I wanted to do was see the villain's face. That's it. And you just like, it follows him around for like 5 minutes at the end of the film as he sets up this new like death trap murder scene thing, and he's just like kind of doing a Halloween sort of face in a boiler suit, and he takes it off and you can see the back of his head and it looks like you're gonna see it. I'm just like, just it's not satisfying that I don't see it.
Right. Yeah.
Make it that dude from the first 2 minutes or something like that. Just wrap it up all nicely. And I think that in terms of trying to be like clever and subversive, it falls flat because at the end I'm frustrated rather than satisfied. Well, I'll tell you what, I was going to talk about self-publishing, but let's carry on this sort of writing tangent then. So not to dwell on all the stuff that's happened in the last 12 years, feels like 12 years, 2 years, because we've come like kind of covered that in other author languages. Yeah. But in regards to kind of how your writing has changed or hasn't changed.
Well, I mean, I started Ascendant well before. I started Ascendant late 2018 in terms of planning and stuff. And I had essentially written the first draft when COVID kicked off. So all the weirdly eerie pandemic related things in the book, like scourges and plagues and quarantine islands and things like that, totally independent of COVID. Wow. So I was already on that track to write a little bit lighter, I suppose. Dragon's Blade isn't the darkest book in the world, but it's certainly darker. I don't even know if I'd say it's darker. It's a little more. It attempted to be a little heavier, and I think it was a very ambitious first series that was maybe too ambitious, but it was the one that was getting me going, and I couldn't imagine writing something else, and so that's all good. I actually wanted to write shorter books, and I ended up writing longer books. So I don't know how that happened. Ascendant is longer than any of the Dragon's Blade books, so it was meant to be shorter, and it turned out longer. And Unbound is really long. But yeah, in terms of sort of writing a little more, I think I wanted to definitely have a less complicated main character. Not that Holt doesn't have complexities and layers and subtleties to him, but that he is very much a hero. He is very much the main character hero type. The kind of you're gonna want to root for him, and you're gonna want to root for Ash. And he doesn't have some like dark past or things to atone for. You know, he's very much out there being naive and optimistic perhaps himself, but trying to save the world, trying to change it. As opposed to my main character, Dragon's Blade, who had a lot of sort of atonements and things like that to go through. And in Battlespire, I kind of I did another redemption thing to an extent. Battlespire was a kind of mix of hero's journey with redemption arc. There was like a bridge between Dragon's Blade and Ascendant in some ways.
I like it.
But yeah, I was already on the way to trying to write something a little lighter, a little, I guess, a little more high fantasy as well, a lot more magic. Dragon's Blade is quite low key on the magic, actually, for something that's an epic fantasy. So yeah, sort of a brighter, more colorful world, just full of more things, full of more interesting places and things and magics and stuff. So I was already on that. I was already doing that pre-COVID, so I've obviously just sort of continued in that vein. I think the series will get a little bit darker here and there as it goes, because it sort of has to, but not too severe. And I hope that the ending will eventually be satisfying and worth it and happy.
I'm sure it will. Yeah. So in terms of your writing, what's your writing look like, writing schedule look like on a daily basis?
Well, when I started, I had to kind of write in the evenings, you know, as a lot of people do. So I think I got so used to doing that for the longest time, I found that I wrote best in the late afternoon and then into the evenings. I've really made a conscious effort over the last 6 months or so to try and change that. So rather than getting up and fanning around and doing lots of admin and marketing and all that kind of business stuff in the morning, I'm trying to switch to do all my writing first thing in the day and then handle everything else later. Because, of course, something will always come up. There'll be something that happens, maybe some small emergency. God knows, you know, your flatmate gets locked out, whatever it might be, right? And that will happen later in the day. And just as you want to get writing, something may come up. Whereas if you just start first thing, the idea is I'm going to get more done. And I think it's a more sensible way to do it. I just for a long time I couldn't quite get into the headspace early on, but it's starting to become easier. So nowadays I'm trying to get up right straight away and deal with everything else later on. And when I can do that, I'm definitely more consistent. So hopefully that means books can come a little quicker, but no promises.
Well, it's all your schedule, right? I mean, that's the beauty of being self-publishing, or self-published, I should say. The beauty of self-publishing.
It is, but we obviously have the pernicious algorithm to worry about when it comes to Amazon. And if you take too long, that's not good to take too long for a whole number of reasons. So I don't want to miss like that kind of yearly release.
Yeah. And readers are voracious as well. It will never cease to amaze me and kind of make me chuckle as well, and put a little bit of fear of the writing gods in me when, like, for instance, you spend, I don't know how long you take to write a book, but let's say months, years even, to write a book, and then you put it out, and let's say you put it out on the Friday, and by the Sunday, someone's finished it and asking for the next book. Like, when's the next one coming?
People asking for updates on book 3 when book 2 has just gone up for pre-order and I wasn't quite finished. It was still going for copy edits, and the pre-order was just up. Like, so when's 3 coming? I'm like, second one's not even it.
What is a trope, or good or bad, that you always use, or even kind of a little trademark, a word or phrase that you can't help but sneak in? For instance, give you an example for my one. I keep putting in, and my co-writer David and my editor no doubt will just wrap my knuckles for this, but I keep putting in cackled. And I found that I went back through my books, and apparently it's a word I use all the time. Everyone's cackling in my books, whether they're a witch or not. Yeah, I just find it as like a harsh laughter in my head, but apparently it's like a cackle. Yeah.
I don't know. I'm trying to think if I do that. I must do. I mean, there'll be people that will be like, "Oh yeah, you use this all the time," but I haven't noticed. Not sure about the word or phrase. I'd have to think about that one. But in terms of like the tropes, I mean, I'm a sucker for a good redemption arc. I love a good redemption arc.
Yeah.
Like in Game of Thrones and Song of Ice and Fire, Jaime is by far my favorite. Which, forget what happens to him in the show, right? That doesn't exist. Okay.
Talk about that. Yeah.
He's on a redemption arc. Okay, God damn it.
Yeah.
And so that was it was my favorite character, and he shouldn't be a character that you like at all, right? I mean, he really shouldn't. Yeah, you do. And I think it's very difficult to pull off. So I love that in there. I love having a good redemption arc. It was part of Dragon's Blade, it's part of Battlespire, and there's a little bit of it coming into this series with a certain character. I don't know. It just feels very natural. I don't have to think about that one so much. Like other tropes, even with our tropes, even if they're quite well defined, I have to really think hard on, am I getting this right? Is this coming across correctly? Am I getting the motivations and the emotions correct? But with a redemption thing, it feels quite natural, because I think, maybe it's just me, but I think we all constantly beat ourselves up a lot, and we're always feeling like we're trying to do better, maybe, or trying to make up for something, or just improve. And so that need to improve, but you're being self-critical, but you're trying to strive forward. You can weave that into something redemptive with a bit of a darker twist to it. And I think that just feels quite natural to me. I think it's quite human.
Does the R stand for redemption arc in Michael R. Miller?
Michael Redemption Arc Miller.
Yeah. That'd be quite good.
Maybe
I like it.
A secret reveal.
Yeah. Dun, dun, dun. You heard it here first. Like it. So let's talk self-publishing and the business side of things. So what is the best piece of advice you've received when it comes to self-publishing? You don't have to be too specific, it can be kind of general.
That I have received.
Yeah. Or you would give to another, I would say.
Ooh, the best thing. Okay, well, I mean, there's so much, isn't there? But I think the absolute number one thing is to focus. It's impossible, and you're not going to be able to do it because we're humans. But try to do the whole. Don't judge yourself against other people. Just judge your own numbers. Just focus on your dashboard, your numbers, your ranks, etc., and see if month to month, year to year, release to release, that's improving, that you're improving, because you're only trying to beat yourself in that sense. Like, yes, other people are in competition with you. Anyone that says, "Oh, we're all super friends," it's like, we are friends, but we are also somewhat in competition. There is some sense of, like, a massive book comes out, yours might tank, right? That might happen, but if you over worry about what other people are doing, who are probably way ahead of you, just in terms of just sheer time, like, they've probably been at this for 10 years. They probably have like a dozen books or more, maybe like several series. Yeah, your one little book, if you start out, ain't gonna cut up to that. But you just have to focus on what you're doing, and try not to let what other people are put you off, and just try to see that as aspirational if you can. And yeah, just compete with yourself on that sense, and don't be too disheartened if someone else seems to be rocketing up ahead of you, because they're not necessarily rocketing past you. They're just been at this longer or have more books, and it's usually it.
Thank you, because that is something that, like, I personally struggle with, or have struggled with, less and less every year. But we mentioned it on the TPRCon SBFBO panel. I will not say SPIFBO. But yeah, the panel we were talking about how I think it was Taya Latham said, what did she say? A rising tide lifts all boats. And I think that is true to a certain extent, but also at the same time, that comparison thing, because you said it, we're human. It's tough to switch off. We are comparison engines. That's how our brains work and have evolved to work. And I saw someone else on Twitter ages ago call it friendly jealousy.
Friendly jealousy.
It's friendly jealousy in the nicest way possible, because you're kind of like, oh, I want to be on that panel, or I want my book to be at this part of the charts, or I want to win that award, and I think it's, it's a mix of drive and that natural comparison. But yeah, that's a good answer, because it's something that I think a lot of people struggle with, even quietly or openly, me included.
Well, you made a it was a joke, just saying, like, as if my career has just been like this from the outside, right? No, it's been more like this, kind of like, there's been these sweet, weirdly loopy dips and waves. It's not some like linear thing, and so, like, at any point you just have to. There will be ups and downs of it. Like, you will obviously sell more the month that you launch something than a month you don't, probably, unless there's some major promotion, right? So you will always have months in the year that are worse than others, and you shouldn't necessarily beat yourself up about that. You shouldn't necessarily then start comparing to other, just you're competing against yourself to write better books, to find more readers, to get more readers to like your stuff. That's really it's like going to the gym. You're not competing against the other person benching twice as much weight beside you. They've been at it longer.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And mentioning we're talking about reaching readers, then talking about marketing, what is if you had to pick one, let's say I swaggered into your office one day and just like kind of turned off or banned you from all these different marketing channels that you've got, and you're only left with one, what marketing channel, like right now and kind of for the rest of the year, would you stick with if you had to choose one?
Is this everything, or is this split between like your paid stuff, paid advertising, and the free stuff? Like what?
I would say
can we narrow
any
it,
channel.
or is it just
everything? No, any channel. So you could say Facebook ads, Amazon ads, Twitter, Facebook. I'll let you say social media as a whole if you want to.
Okay, I'm not allowed to. Okay, well, if I could only keep one, for me, what's working for me, I'd probably say Facebook. assuming you can get it to work, because you can have extra benefits of growing a page in a group alongside those ads as they run. You can engage with people on the ads, you can actually interact with them, which you can't on Amazon. You can invite people who interact with your ad to like your page, and then invite them into your group, like a readers group. So you get a lot of bang for the buck in terms of growing an audience. Obviously, I've got a mailing list, which I've had for years, very important. I set up a Discord last year. You can see a lot more visible hype for things like, that was the first time having a Discord with the latest launch, was just seeing people chatting and getting excited about it on the day. Like really seeing that feedback was really cool, because before you just kind of like things I've found, you sort of sit there quietly wondering what's happening out in the world. You get a little bit of feedback on that one, and that's really cool. And there's other cool things, like people have started doing a D&D campaign just in there organically. They just met each other and started playing. So that's been really fun to see. So
that's really cool.
Maybe in the future I'd say keep the Discord, but it's not quite there yet. But like, yeah, I need to use a bit of all those things. But
yeah,
personally, having ever really used Twitter, I'm not a huge fan of it. I don't like it all being that short. I just don't really use it all that much in it. Because I don't use it, I'm not going to be very good at marketing myself or all the books on there. So just it's the same with Instagram. So limited in a little bit, but I think Facebook's still a good bang for buck, assuming you can get something that works. I think you get a lot of extra benefits other than just the advertising.
Well, Mike, this has been honestly fantastic to chat to you. It's been great catching up with you as well. For anyone watching, where can they find you? Where can we find your books and you online? Where can we stalk you?
Well, all the books are on Amazon, of course. The audiobooks are all available on Audible. Songs of Chaos, those books are narrated by Peter Kenny, who also narrated The Witcher, which is really cool. He's just done a beyond stunning job. Like, I was so lucky to get Peter on board for those books. They can all be found on Audible. And if you just want to check me out in general, come to my website at www.michaelarmiller.co.uk.
Awesome, like a pro. Thanks again. It's been great to kick off 2022 with you. And honestly, for those watching, you don't even have to like dragons, just damn good fantasy. Go check out Mike's books. But yeah, Mike, thanks for dropping by. It's
been great to come and catch up and have a chat.
Absolutely. Thanks, man. Yeah. Take it easy. Bye.